Hello, 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 one and all. Welcome to the Bard Stream. Thank you for joining me. Well, summer is rolling along, hot and toasty, and I'm here sweating away in my office every day, working on many a project. And I figured, why not do a Bard Stream talking about some of these upcoming projects as much as I can talk about them, and also take some chat questions from you all. I'm doing a bit of a different setup this time, so if you see me looking around in different directions, that is why. Actually, I've got my chat over here to the side. It's actually a little bit inconvenient, but whatever. It is there. Okay, I'll check in on the chat questions here shortly. Why don't I dive into the various topics at hand? Some of these things I'll be able to talk about in more detail, and others not as much. So, got a nice list of things here. First, and perhaps foremost, Monstrous Heroes. So there's a lot going on with this huge project. As you probably well know, the PDF version of Monstrous Heroes launched like a month ago, a little more than a month ago, a month and 12 days ago, something to that effect. And the PDF turned out really nice. I actually did the formatting on it myself this time. With the Emporium, I did like the second round and the final formatting, like the layout, but I didn't do the initial layout. But I've learned more about InDesign and have a friend who knows a lot about it, who also gave me some guidance. So yeah, if you haven't seen it yet, it's worth checking out. There's links down in the video description. You can just order it, or if you want, you can just grab a free version of it. The free version obviously doesn't have as much content in it, but it still has a good amount of content and enough for you to play Monstrous Heroes and actually play quite a bit of it. So yeah, 5th edition monster classes, race classes, and there are 17 of them, and a bunch of other stuff in there too, feats and spells, and a bunch of like world building, campaign settings, and plots. The physical version of it has been printed. The hardcover version does exist in this world. Some of the hardcovers are currently in the UK, and Games Quest is going to be shipping those out to non-US orders, non-US backers. And then the other bulk of it, the larger percentage of it, of the load, is currently on a ship crossing the deep blue sea. Hopefully I'll be receiving it here in 1 or 2 weeks. That's the estimate. I should have it in hand, in storage here in, say, 1.5 to 2 weeks. And then it's going to be a big flurry of getting it shipped out to you all. So thank you for your patience. I'm very, very excited. I haven't seen the physical version of it yet, so I'm quite eager. Very, very eager for that. So that'll be rolling along, and then I'll be selling it as normal, and it'll be at like a retail price, which is a little bit higher than the pre-order price that it's currently at. So if you're considering getting it, now is the time. All right, so that's it for Monstrous Heroes. Project is in the latter stage. Physical version will be shipping in the near future. And then related to Monstrous Heroes and just my channel in general, there are a couple of other secondary pieces to that Kickstarter that I have been working on, making progress, still need to do a lot more work on them, but they're coming along well. And those are the adventure modules, Trials of the Neophyte and Eldritch Castle, which you perhaps have even seen when I ran the series here on my channel. If you haven't, they're very much worth watching if you're someone who likes very immersive, story-driven D&D campaigns. They're actually, the way that I did them are narrated solo adventures. So they watch more like a series or a movie, because it's just a produced narrated thing. It's not a live stream. It's not a group of people playing. There's no out of game anything. It's all 100% in game, in character. So working on those. There'll be digital versions, PDF versions of Trials of the Neophyte and Eldritch Castle, so that you can play those adventures at home with your own groups. And I am setting both of them up to where you can run them either as solo character adventures, like how I did on the series on my channel, or for just a party, a group of characters like normal. So all the encounters essentially have two versions. There's the solo character version and there's the party version. And then along with that, map pack number 3, that will be releasing as well. I really, really hope I can get all those things wrapped up and done before the end of August, because August is going to be shipping month for the hardcover of Monstrous Heroes. Adventures continue, and many of them. Lots of them. You might even say a myriad of them. So some pretty big news. This coming Thursday, so just here in 2 days, will be the very first pilot session of Myriad Legends, the mega campaign that I've been thinking about, talking about, brewing for months now. Mega campaign, community campaign, West Marches style campaign, whatever you want to call it. It's a big campaign that's going to be set in Ikoros with me and a bunch of other GMs and lots of players. We have to start off very small with like a small base of players and GMs and work out the kinks. It's like a train, and we have to get like the first few chugs of the train to get the thing out of the station and make sure that it actually is functioning and not falling off the rails. And then over time, that train is going to build up steam and momentum, and it's going to start bringing along a lot more people. So hopefully we'll get a pretty giant train coming out. I don't know how big it can scale up, but I guess we'll find out. Hopefully it can scale up to very, very large with tons of players and lots of GMs. Each GM is going to have a small region in the world of Ikoros, and that GM will then in that region have like some kind of base or stronghold or bastion or town or whatever it might be, plus a bunch of other points of interest. And then it will largely be up to the GM what kind of sessions to run, right? It could be just a bunch of one-shots and just get whoever first come, first serve, whoever grabs the sessions, whoever accepts. We're using Apollo, the scheduling app on Discord, to coordinate all this, by the way. It's coordinated through Discord. So if you're not on my Discord server, now would be a great time to go and join on that. There should be a link for that as well down in the video description. I think some other GMs will run like multi-session adventures. Some will probably adapt modules and transplant them into their regions in Ikoros. And the idea really is a West Marches style, though, where a GM will just make posts. I can run whatever session at this date and time, and here's how many people can join. And then people just go into the Adventure Posts channel, and if the time works for them, hit accept. So one of the reasons for doing this is that I want to facilitate a lot of people to play some great games of D&D. Scheduling is one of the trickier and annoying parts of running RPGs. So this is going to take a lot of that legwork and pain in the butt out of everyone's butt, really, both the GMs and the players. So it's going to be a much more flowing or even free-flowing style. And if you guys have some questions specifically about Myriad Legends, I'll do what I can to answer it. The main thing I can tell you right now is just please be patient and bear with me. I've been working on so much with like getting this Google Drive, like I almost said catalog, like Google Drive series of folders with like information to help keep track of GMs and players and the regions and the lore and the world building and the campaign setting rules and maps, and that's an ongoing thing. I'm going to continually be adding to that and updating that. And so it's a big project, and hopefully all this work I'm doing up front is going to pay off and sustain and let us play a lot of great D&D for a long time to come. So bear with me, be patient. We're just literally getting into the first pilot session this Thursday, which I will be GMing. And then the following day, Friday, Adam Wood, who you all know from my channel, he's been in a number of live stream adventures. He is also a GM, and he's going to be running the second pilot session on Friday, and I'm going to be a player in that one. And we're going to, of course, have a meeting and talk after it and see what kinks can we work out. I want to work out as many kinks as possible and really make the logistical coordinating side of this easier than what you normally would have to deal with when running for a group of players or running campaigns. And also at the same time, another thing I want to do besides making this like facilitating it, making it easier and more practical for lots of people to get into playing some great games, is a coherent world. I'm not going to go talking about the new D&D books that are coming out, or the way I think things are heading with D&D and Wizards of the Coast. That's not what I want to talk about in this video. As you probably know, I actually am not really big on doing critiques and criticisms. I actually do a fair amount of it in my videos, but in general, just in my life, me as a person, that's not really my favorite thing. I would much rather create instead of, nitpick other people's stuff. Now, I think there is a purpose for critique and constructive criticism. I think it serves a great purpose, and we do need some of that, and we do need feedback, and we do need to improve things. And I try to, not only talk about what I don't like, but also what I do like. But really, another of the main reasons for Myriad Legends is that I want to create an adventurous realm that's in my style, that I think a lot of other people like that style as well, where it's a bit more classic fantasy, a bit more grounded, a little grittier, a little bit more, slightly more realistic, slightly more historical, just that classic mythic fantasy, and just really focus on, great world building, great adventures, great storytelling. Just really make the storytelling and the adventure and the imagination and the immersion and the quality of it, make those things the focus. That's what we're worried about. Everything else is going to be subordinate to that. So I guess for those that want to play in a setting or in a world that doesn't have as much of that kind of pop culture-y corporate feel to it, and has a little bit more of that like grittier, a little more grounded, inspired by Tolkien and Howard and classic fantasy and mythology, and people who like a little bit of historical inspiration in there, and a dose of swords and sorcery, a balance of old school and new school, I would say. I want it to be both those things. I want it to respect the old school and to like kind of carry on the torch from the old school, because there's a lot of amazing, deep, powerful roots in the old school, and also like pioneer forward and be innovative and take advantage of the different technological enhancements that we have, that we can use in terms of Discord and all the apps and add-ons for Discord and the VTT options that are out there now. I've gotten pretty well into Foundry personally. Okay, so I've said a lot about it, but really just please be patient. It's just the first few chugs of the train trying to leave the station. I don't want things to just completely explode and fall apart right away. So I'm trying to do this in the best way that I can. We are, because this is a community effort. I'm captaining the helm, but it's taking a whole crew, and I'm very excited. Okay, it looks like you guys have got some questions in that I need to get to. So last thing that I'll just tease you with. This one's going to be fast. It's really just a teaser. It's a quick mentioning. I have started the very beginning concept stages of my next Kickstarter. It's going to be different than my previous two books, but also quite similar and familiar to those who enjoy my content. I am going to be doing an adventure module. I want to do a Kickstarter project that is not going to kill me and take me 2 years working like a madman day and night to produce. I want something that, and you all have to wait that whole time. That's another thing to keep in mind. I want something that can be turned around pretty quickly, that everybody can have in their hands, you know, from when the Kickstarter ends to people having the book in their hands. You know, that's just going to be some months, right? I don't know, 6 months, 4 months, 3 months, something like that, something pretty fast. And it'll be obviously not as thick of a book. An adventure module. I'm also not going to do all the freaking writing, asterisk on that, with Monstrous Heroes and with the Emporium. I didn't do 100% of the writing and editing. I just did like 98% of it. So I'm going to try to really learn that it's okay for me to work with other people, or to hire another writer, or maybe even two, depending upon how the funding goes, to kind of share the load a bit. So then hopefully that will speed things up as well. So I'm planning to not just go at it so solo, to have one or two collaborators in terms of developing the adventure and doing writing, etc. So I know the name of the adventure. I know who the one collaborator is. I've got a few artists already lined up, artists that you've seen in my previous two books. I know like the general premise of the adventure. I know where it's set in Ikoros. There's a lot of little bits that are already there, but the rest I don't know yet. There's a lot to be fleshed out and developed. And that's all I can tell you. I'm not going to say anything else. I'm just going to leave it rather mysterious. Okay, so let me see if there are some questions that I should be attending to, and hopefully I can provide some answers that are worthwhile. Starting from the top, Rock Drostrisk. I can never say your name properly, but thank you, regular around my Discord. Okay, if you can get to me before we begin. Well, so much for that. Please tell me, if you can, how often is what is on screen going to be different than what it was before? I don't understand your question. You typed that before the stream though. I'm sorry, I don't understand your question. If you could clarify, I will do my best to answer it. Okay. Metallic Dragon. I love that Trials of the Neophyte, that module, right? The Real Fight, that was a great campaign. Thank you very much. The version of it that's going to be, you know, released as the module is going to be very similar to the what you watched on that YouTube series. I'm really just converting it over to a full-on proper adventure module. You will see some small changes here and there, some slight improvements here and there, but by and large, it's the exact same thing. So you all in your home groups can play through that whole experience. Saint Lucas. Hi, Esper. You've been a great help in learning about individual monsters and a lot of the problems with the current 5e designs. I'm glad that I've been helpful for you, and I love monsters, so I'm going to keep doing those ranking videos. I have to do more than just monster rankings and reviewing official D&D books, but that is something that I'm passionate about, and I like doing it. My next rankings is probably going to be Beholders. I've already started some notes on it, and it looks like that'll also be a pretty meaty, a pretty substantial ranking video. So we'll see if I can get that done here within the next 2 or 3 weeks. Jason's 7788 Esper. The short stories rock. I've introduced them to several patients of mine, and they love them. I'm so glad to hear that. And, well, I'm not currently able to spend much time writing strictly short stories just for short stories' sake, and I miss it dearly. I miss it dearly, and I hope I can write a new short story sometime soon. That said, if you have Monstrous Heroes, or if you're thinking about getting it, most of the class entries start off with a little short story, like a microfiction. I'm probably going to make some YouTube videos just narrating those little micro short stories. Jab Cab, hype for the West Marches style event coming up. Will the cadence in speech need to match the typical fantasy medieval cadences, or just be references to modern reality that need to be avoided? That's a really good question. So in the campaign setting rules, I'm telling people, don't just play just like a regular modern person who's just cosplaying in a fantasy costume. Now, no one's going to expect you to be some professional voice actor or to know exactly the right way to structure your sentences to just sound so like amazing and theatrical. If you can do that, then by all means do so. So this isn't really like expecting people to jump through hoops and do backflips, but to be mindful. I would say someone who appreciates that, who appreciates a game where people try to avoid it just feeling like the modern real world, and who like it to be, a fantasy world, a world of wonder, a world of imagination, an old kind of ancient or medieval feeling world. If you appreciate that sort of thing and you want to just, kind of do your best to contribute to that, then thumbs up. That's what we hope for. Bath hating cat. You should write and read your short stories again. Your stories for many years ago are absolutely epic. Wow, 2 people commenting about the old short stories. Thank you. That really means a lot to me. I'm going to try to say something, and I don't want this to come out wrong, so I'll do my best. I love role-playing games, and I love that shared experience with everyone. And I kind of love everything about role-playing games. I love the world-building portion. I love the storytelling portion. I love the voice acting and being in character portion. I love the combat portion, the like strategic combat, whether it's theater of the mind or whether it's like tokens with a grid or a VTT map. The social aspect and the creating of the shared memories. I really love everything about it. I'm kind of someone who just loves it all. Though there, I would say, is like one more chamber in my heart, in my soul, that's even deeper, that goes even further, and that would be writing. And I mean writing short stories and novels, those sorts of things, where it's just more like a direct connection to the channel of creativity, the channel of inspiration. I don't know if that makes sense to everybody. That's the best way I can say it. So think of it like inspiration or creativity as this big river, this river of water, like beautiful waters, sometimes dark waters, and they're kind of mysterious. You don't know exactly where they come from, and there's like things that live in the water, and you could fish, and you don't know quite what you're going to get, but you have some amount of control over it, right? You know, like what bait you're fishing with, and you can choose, you know, where you're going to situate yourself along the riverbank, and you could swim in the water. There's a lot of ways where you can interact with it and kind of take care of things and have some agency or kind of steward the experience. But ultimately, you are not the river. Ultimately, I don't program my brain and like just dictate to it like, oh, right now you will be inspired and have this great idea and make this thing. It more kind of comes to me. So I don't fully understand it. I'm very grateful that I have it. It is kind of a blessing and a curse, but I have found some ways to mitigate the downsides of it, the dark side of it, which actually can be very dark. And writing, when it's a short story or novels, which I haven't even published any of them yet, but they're here on my computer. I feel like I'm just much closer to that river. Like I'm really just immersing as deep as I can possibly go in it. And then hopefully whatever I catch and what I'm able to cook up, you know, the fish I'm able to cook up and share with people. Hopefully people like it. So at least 2 people do. I'm glad to hear that. I'll see what I can do about putting up some more short stories. I've got a few that I've never shown anyone, so I'd want to edit them. See, that's the thing. I very much appreciate the compliment of liking those stories from some years ago, though I know that I've improved a lot as a writer since then, really a lot. And I cringe a little bit when I see those older writings. I like the stories themselves, you know, like what happens in the story, the plot and the characters and the tone and the mood of it all. So I guess kind of the main things, that doesn't make me cringe really, but the actual writing and the execution and the delivery and some of the decisions that were made, I just feel like I've gotten a lot better. So, okay, moving along with some questions and comments. Travel well. I like that. I like the way that sounds. Hello, Esper. I love your material. Thank you for what you do. Thank you very much for your encouragement and for saying so, and for, you know, for being here, for being a part of the channel. Jabcab, I guess any questions I have will probably be answered in the Discord. Check it out for sure. Yes, on Discord, and I'll be making YouTube videos about Myriad Legends in the upcoming, you know, weeks and months. So I know there's a lot of things that don't make sense. There's a lot of kind of blank spots, but those will come. Metallica Dragon, will it be up to the GMs if they are running on Roll20 or other game platforms? That's right. Yeah, each GM will run by, you know, whatever, you know, platform of choice, VTT of choice. So like the session I'm going to run on Thursday, we'll be using probably Zoom for video and audio call. Maybe I'll just use Discord. We'll see. I'm not a really big fan of the Discord video call, but it's not bad. And then I'm using Foundry, web hosted through the Forge, for my VTT. Mainly we'll just be doing it for the digital dice and for any visual aids we might need. Largely it's going to be Theater of the Mind. I actually love Theater of the Mind. I really love Theater of the Mind. I like maps too, so like I said, kind of love it all. St. Lucas, I don't want to talk about the way Wizards of the Coast is running the game. It's okay. We can only look at things they make us... they can only look at the things that make us sad for so long too. I'll talk about in another stream or a different YouTube video the upcoming books. The most like blanket statement I can make right now is it's kind of a mixed bag for me. I think there are some things that are good and are improvements, other things that are just kind of didn't have to really mess with that. They just kind of like shuffled stuff around, and then other things that I think are worse and I don't like, and I feel concerned. They make me feel concerned. Let's keep going. Okay, Rock was able to clarify. Oh, I see. I was wondering if it made a difference if I watch the screen or just hear your voice. Well, I don't know how to answer that, Rock. Sometimes you have a way of putting things that is so unique that I don't know exactly how to respond. I would say, if possible, watch and listen. If not possible, just listen. Final option would be watch without listening, which I think is a very distant third place. Theology of the bodybuilder. Loosely speaking, what are the criteria for serving as a GM in the community campaign? Great question, and I'll be making more announcements and some videos about this upcoming. So, I mean, as long as you like the idea of playing in this campaign setting and you like the campaign setting and you are a, relatively experienced GM, then I'd say go for it. At some point in the pretty near future, I'll be adding in new GMs and seeking GMs to add in. So, definitely hang around. Get on the Discord server, and I'll be putting announcements there and on YouTube. So just kind of be on the lookout. At the beginning, I will be adding GMs personally, and I will also be holding GM gatherings from time to time, maybe once a month or something, where we'll all do a Zoom call, like a big group conference call, and just hold like a council meeting and talk about how things have been going, share tips and tricks. I'd like people to tell me what, issues are popping up and how we can maybe find solutions to whatever kind of problem. And maybe I could even be in a role where I could mentor a little bit some of the GMs. I would really like to do a bit of mentoring for the GMs. So that's what I have in mind. On down the line, when and if things really get flowing well and flowing smoothly and we've worked out a lot of the kinks, I would like to make some of the GMs that are more, well, let's just say I'd like to make like a second level of GM where it's like a admin GM who then have the ability to add in GMs. And so it wouldn't be only me adding in the GMs. So let's see. We're shooting for the stars here, guys. Jab Cab will players for Myriad Legends. I think that's the West March style event. Yes. Need to be great warriors, or will there be room for support characters? Everything, in any kind of character. In fact, the way that it's oriented, West March's style, it's just kind of largely up to the players what they want to do. Like, you're not going to be required to all be the same level. All characters will just start off at level 1 with 0 XP. The GM, when a GM makes an adventure post, it's going to say in there something like maybe what level of adventure it is, like the level of difficulty, first level, third level, etc. Or maybe that meta information won't be given, and it will just say a body was found that had the bite marks of a large-sized dragon on it. And so if you think you would want to get tangled up with a threat such as that, go ahead. But yeah, all kinds of characters. Oh my, I just lost my place. There we go. Almost anarchy, bro. You get to add 3 homebrew classes to 5e. Yours or ones you have seen? what would you add? My friend and I thought about alchemist, gunslinger, and pugilist, covering archetypes not covered. Well, I could give all kinds of answers to that. I could think about that for quite a while. So for the sake of time, I'll just use 3 from my books. I would do the Paragon from the Emporium. I would do a revision to it, just a bit of a revision, a bit of a remastering, not completely changing it, but just a little touch up, because that really fits the role of like a mythic fated soul. And then from Monstrous Heroes, what would I say are the most unique monster classes? So, gosh, this is so hard. The first one that jumps out at me is Brindlecap, the small-sized Fey, the little small-sized Fey guys. Because why? Because why? They're tricksters. They're great tricksters. They're half casters, but they don't really feel like rogues. They slightly feel like bards and druid, like a bard druid thing, slightly, but only slightly. They've got a bunch of their own unique trickstery type abilities. There are 4 subclasses to that one, so there was a lot of inspiration going into it, and they have quite a bit of exclusive spells, particularly cantrips. There's a lot of like Brindlecap only cantrips, and they draw really heavily from folklore and mythology, Spriggans and Redcaps and Pucks and things of that nature. So I just think it's a very, very flavorful, very dynamic trickster type class, and depending upon how you play it, it could be very magical and spellcastery, or more grounded, more warrior-y. The Spriggan, and maybe even more so the Redcap, they're a bit more warrior-like, but with that kind of fey magic enhancing and lacing everything. And then aside from that, the Paracosma is quite different and quite weird. Oh man, that would be a cool one. I don't think we quite have something like that. The Protean would be pretty cool too. What just for sake of time, why don't I go with Paracosma? It's the Aberration race class. It's very freaky, very, very freaky. It's like a thing born out of the nightmares of an outer god, or as some might say, a great old one. And really horror, body horror, very dark fantasy, a slight touch of sci-fi in there, and it has a lot. That class has a lot of unique and very strange, weird features. It's just quite different, while at the same time still following the format and the power level of 5th edition. So yeah, I was glad I was able to pull that off. I just don't think there's something like that in 5th edition that I've seen. A strange aberration based player option. This was an Aberrant Mind Sorcerer and the Great Old One Warlock, but those are just like little touches of that theme, little touches of that flavor. Bob Kane. Hello, Bob. Esper, love your ranking videos. Ever thought about ranking monsters from Kobold Press monster books? I've been asked that a few times before. I have mixed feelings about that. On the one hand, I think there are a number of people that would like it, and it would be interesting to do. And I have seen those books. I've actually used some of those monsters, not a lot, but I have used some of them. And I've also played in a campaign where a GM was using some. And there are some cool monsters in there. In general, I don't love them though. I haven't seen the new one though. I think they like remastered the Tome of Beasts. Yeah, I think it very much needed a remastering. The power levels of those monsters were just all over the place. I don't know why, but they didn't. whoever was designing them, the team, right, wasn't really following well the 5th edition monster building guidelines. And so a lot of them are too strong. A lot of them in play come out like 1 or 2 CR higher than their stated CR, which is, it can definitely be a bit of a shock, because the standard, like official 5th edition monsters, they tend to err on the side of a little weak for their CR. And there are some that I would say really are like 1 CR lower than what's stated. But it depends. Not all of them are. Like dragons aren't. I'd say dragons are well powerful for their CRs, and maybe even slightly higher. I'm really, I guess I'm very biased is what I want to say. I make a lot of monsters myself, and I have like a particular style that I like to do, and I like making things that have a lot of really unique abilities. And so it makes me very picky and hard to please. And I'm reluctant about making a video that criticizes too much another third-party content creator. Why is that? Why is that? Is it because I want to be supportive of third-party content creators in general? I guess it's kind of that, even though I don't think that someone should just automatically get support and promotion just because they're third party. Just being third party, that in of itself doesn't mean really anything. That doesn't mean automatically you get a free pass, or automatically your book's great, or automatically you can do no wrong, or etc. So I don't think anyone gets this like free pass immunity to criticism. I don't think my work gets any free pass. It's subject to criticism. But why is it? I think it's probably because I feel like my criticism might be a bit too much, and I don't want to really make a book make a video rather that's that critical. Again, I haven't seen the newer versions of Tome of Beasts, right? Tome of Beasts, Tome of Foes. So I don't know what they've done to make improvements, but I was a bit surprised, let's just say. A bit surprised and a bit disappointed. Haley U 2024. One time I see Esper live and I'm trapped at work. Well, I hope that your work goes without much misery and that you have great fortitude. Mad Mage. How come wizards can't think like you about world building? Too much modernisms injected into the modules these days from them. I don't care about the modernisms, and I don't care for the way that things have become sort of incoherent. There isn't really a coherence to the lore anymore. It's just kind of anything goes, and just every once in a while they have new writers just completely introduce new things to the lore, and they just completely discard or ruin established lore, and just kind of it's a sludge thing. And we see this in all kinds of media and superhero movies and all kinds of established, what people refer to as franchises now, even though I'm not really particularly keen on referring to works of art as franchises, but that's what they've largely become, very corporatized. And there's just this sludge factor where it's just churn out whatever the corporation thought was going to be the most appealing to the biggest swath of consumers possible. Who cares about respecting the people who have invested themselves into this since they were kids? Who cares about consistency? Who cares about common sense? Who cares about having a coherent cosmology, a coherent setting? Who cares about quality even, or good writing? So yeah, I'm hoping to offer people a alternative to that, which is sad that has to be considered an alternative. Just regular old fashioned, try to make great art, try to write, produce great writing. Like that's that's just the way it was for forever. It's really very, very recently that quality and art was dethroned. But we'll see. I don't think you really can dethrone it in an ultimate sense. I think we're just going through a transitional experimental phase. Art is divine. Art is above you know, social trends, and art is above politics, and art is above corporations, and art has a much higher place. Art comes from somewhere that's so deep and so powerful. Art can change your life. And when I say art, I mean that in the broadest sense of the arts, music and visual arts and film and even games, literature. Like, man, we can't live without that. Man does not live by bread alone. So, F. Huber, Beneath Pale Man's Grave is what got me to subscribe. Nice. I actually have not watched Beneath Pale Man's Grave for quite a while. I go back and rewatch certain narrated solo adventures from time to time, but that's one that I haven't seen in quite a while. Another thing I would like to do some more of on the channel are narrated solo adventures. Rafael Ferreira de Moraes. I hate saying it that way. Rafael Ferreira de Moraes. Hi Esper, I am a fan of your ranking videos. What do you feel is the best category of monsters? I've read your comment incorrectly. I'm a fan of your ranking videos. What do you feel is the best category of monsters as is handled? Yeah, which one's handled the best in 5e? Yeah, which category of monsters do I think is handled the best in 5e, and which one do I think is handled the worst? Thus far, if I just think about all of the ranking videos I've done, the best I've seen is overall hags. There are some others that are great, like celestials. I think in general are quite good, and maybe undead. I don't know. So I would say, just from everything, all the types of monsters that I've ranked so far, I would say hags are the best I've seen. Drow are second place, and celestials are third place. Just in terms of the monsters being so robust, so much to them, really great role playing. You know, in terms of the monster is based around interacting with the characters. Great adventure hooks, great storytelling, great aesthetics, very interesting mechanics. They draw upon powerful, timeless archetypes. They've kind of got everything, right? They sort of have everything going for them, and are all around just great monster kinds of monsters, I would say. Drow is not a creature type. I guess hag isn't a creature type either. Celestials is a creature type. So I'd put them in that order. Hags, drow, celestials. The worst, oozes and plants. They just don't get enough love. They're kind of more limited creature types, though. Like when you think about undead and constructs and monstrosities, those sorts of monsters, they just have so much variety to them. You can kind of do anything. But a plant creature, well, it's always a plant, and an ooze is always a slime. So they're narrower. You just don't have as much space to work with. But I think they could be. I mean, it's not impossible to make great oozes and great plants, and to make more oozes and more plants. I wish there were more. I made sure to include some in the Emporium, and there's an ooze class and a plant class in Monstrous Heroes. And damn, I think they're great. The Protean ooze class I think is awesome. I'm going to be playing one soon. I really like how that one turned out. And the plant class I think also is very flavorful and has a lot going on with it. Damien 3182, those 4th edition books on the shelf. You know, I used to have more. I actually sold some of my 4E books. I wish I wouldn't have. I also sold some of my 3E books. Yeah, I sold a bunch of stuff in 2016 before I went on this huge journey, this huge adventure. I had to get rid of a lot of stuff and clear out a lot of space. So I kind of wish I wouldn't have done that. I still look back at the old books, 4th edition and 3rd edition, not just for the ranking videos, but just to look at the art and to read them and get ideas and inspiration. I find in general, I'm able to mine the 3E books more easily than the 4E books. The 4E books are a little bit more difficult to mine because a lot of 4th edition just looks like a spreadsheet, and they're just these like very plain blocks of powers, the different character powers or monsters and the monsters powers, because 4th edition was in a lot of 4th edition was focused on the tactical grid-based miniatures combat. In some ways it was a miniatures battle mat tactics game. It was a tactics battle, a D&D minis tactics. A lot of it was that. That's not all of it. There's other stuff that's in there that is nice. Some of the early 4E adventures I thought were quite good. Both the like published campaign paths and then also the ones that were in the online digital dungeon magazine. The quality declined sadly as the edition went on in terms of the adventures. The flavor of certain things. I just talked about that, or I just mentioned that ooze class, the Protean. Some of the inspiration for that class came from the Battle Mind in 4th edition's Player's Handbook 3. I really like the Battle Mind, just in terms of the flavor and the types of things it could do. Yeah, but in general, I find 3E has more staying power for me, inspires me more. I find it easier to mine for ideas. Okay, let's see if any other questions are in the chat. Okay, here's a few. Jab Cab, will players know what serious themes they'll be getting into with the West Marches style events? I mean, some in advance. Each GM has a region, and you can like go into the Google Drive folders and read whatever bits of lore or the style that the GM's made some notes about. And then there are lore documents and world building information that I'm slowly working on. And then I'll be making some YouTube videos talking about the lore. And you can, see some of my current YouTube videos that are set in Ikoros. My most recent issue of Scrolls of the Bard, issue number 83. There's a section in there. It's just right on like the second page. It has a list of all the videos on my YouTube channel, both standard videos and live streamed ones that are set in Ikoros. So if you want to watch those and get kind of a taste or a glimpse of things, you can find that issue of the newsletter on my Patreon. There's even a free public version of it. Links in the video description for the Patreon. St. Lucas, when you write, who do you aspire to emulate as a storyteller? My personal one for fantasy is Ed Greenwood. I enjoy his ability to make a world that feels lived in. Nice. Oh, my inspirations are quite varied. I like a lot of different types of books, fiction and nonfiction. So, but just in terms of fiction that's inspired me a lot, Edgar Allan Poe, Shakespeare, H.P. Lovecraft, Robert E. Howard, Tolkien's huge, George R.R. Martin. An early inspiration of mine early on was Alvin Schwartz and those Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark books. gosh, I used to like Calvin and Hobbes quite a bit. So, um, Bill Patterson. Um, some other inspirations of mine. Gosh. I read a fair amount of Cormac McCarthy recently. I found that pretty inspiring. Some of Neil Gaiman. Not all of his stuff works for me, but some of his stuff I find quite fascinating. I like a lot of things that inspired fantasy, mythology, and religious texts, and folklore and fairy tales, classic, like the original versions of fairy tales, old works of literature. But I like a lot of nonfiction stuff too. Justin White, hey Esper, do you have any ideas for large-scale combat with armies? I do. D&D 5e is not good for running large scale as strictly as a large scale like mechanics. So one thing that I think is a cool thing to do is prepare. Let's say there's this big battle that's going to take place during a war, and the characters are going to this battle location. Let's say it's a fortress that is getting, there's an invading enemy army. So you've got the local army that is garrisoning the fortress, defending the fortress, and then the enemy invader army. And then the player characters go, and let's just say they're part of the defenders defending the fortress. So prepare combat encounters basically like normal, where you're going to have the amount of player characters and then these like key enemy groups that the characters will be fighting. And then to simulate the feeling of a large scale combat, there's two cool things you can do. One, make all of the generalized combat, like all of the people fighting around them, essentially a terrain effect. So this might work better for theater of the mind, but a visual aid also could be of great help. So this, let's say this big area that's, it could be hundreds of feet in diameter. There is a mass scale combat taking place in there. There are people fighting on both sides. It's difficult terrain. It provides cover, and you could even say that, at a certain distance it's half cover, and then at a certain distance it's 3/4, and that at a certain distance it's full cover. That's quite reasonable. Like, if the target is 30 feet or more away, they have 3/4 cover. And if the target is, whatever, 120 feet away or more, they have total cover. You could figure that out depending upon the density of it. And like once per round, do like initiative count 20, like a layer effect or a terrain effect, where something happens. Maybe the player characters have to make some kind of skill check, like an acrobatics check to avoid stray enemy attacks, or an athletics check to avoid getting knocked down, or a perception check to avoid some other kind of hazard. Basically, what you're creating is a terrain hazard, but just instead of it being, plant hazards or rock hazards or some trap hazards, we understand that they are people, people in action, in combat. So that's one thing you can do. Make the massive fighting a terrain hazard, and it's difficult terrain. It can cause some blockage, some cover, and like once per round, there's some kind of check that gets made, because that's a very dangerous place to be in. Second, and other than that, you still have prepared an encounter. So like within that terrain hazard, you have whatever group of enemies that your player characters are focusing on taking down, their targets. Second thing you can do is make horde monsters. I made a YouTube video, just look on my channel, that was like horde monsters. It's breakthroughs in the title. monster design breakthrough, 5e monster design breakthrough, and I made these things called horde monsters, which are sort of like swarms, but instead of being like a medium or a large size space full of tiny creatures, it's a huge or gargantuan size space full of medium sized creatures, or maybe small or large. And this horde represents like dozens and dozens of monsters, and you know, it accomplishes the effect of lots of combatants all at once. So check out that video. That video also has a link in the video description to an issue of my newsletter where I featured some horde monsters that I had developed, like a horde of, I don't know if there's a horde of zombies in there or not, a horde of goblins. And then also in Esper's Emporium of Esoterica, there are 3 horde monsters. There's the celestial one called the Angelic Host, an undead ghostly one called the Pernicious Mist, and there's a second undead one of the undead elementals, the Bonefire, which is a bunch of like fiery skeletal things in a horde. Okay. Another thing you could do, I guess, is a third thing, is also design some events, some battle events, and you could implement these however you want. You can implement them, you know, like timing based, like at a certain time this event will happen, or every 3 rounds of combat I will randomly roll an event and see which one of these happens. So you could plan them out however you want, whether they're randomized or not, whether they occur at specific times or not. Maybe the players can stall out some of these events, and the events are whatever. You know, the invading army arrives with some new siege weapons that begin to attack the fortress walls and the ramparts. Enemies on flying mounts, you know, like a flying cavalry appears and they go in for a flying raid. You know, a powerful enemy spellcaster suddenly unleashes this spell that alters the battle in some sort of way. Gosh, this is inspiring. It's making me want to do a mass scale battle. But yeah, you got to do stuff like that. There aren't really any good straight up mass combat wargaming mechanics for 5th edition. Okay. I'm running out of time, guys. Let me grab just a couple more questions or comments. I'm going to scan through a few of them here. Okay. Pete Screwball. What a name. Esper, how did you improve your voice acting? I've done some things, but I wouldn't say that I've trained extensively, and I'm not formally trained. You know, one is just watching tutorials on YouTube, kind of how you can learn to do about anything. I still do. I like watching tutorials that talk about different accents, like different accents from different countries or different regions, and people will talk about, you know, ways to like hold your mouth and your tongue and different kind of personality quirks to throw in. Other tutorial videos talk more about the different elements that compose the human voice and what you can do to affect them. Other tutorials really are not exactly tutorials, so to say, but rather vocal warm-up exercises where you make all kinds of very strange sounds, but they you know, physically work out and strengthen your vocal cords, your diaphragm, your, you know, fine muscular control. I'm probably not using the right technical terms here. And Part of it's just watching other people, watching other voice, I guess listening, really listening to other voice actors and, just paying attention and observing and kind of analyzing, oh, that's an interesting voice, and try to reproduce it myself. Watch scenes from movies and just practice over and over different kinds of characters' voices. I can do some better than others. And then the last thing I could say, which this is not going to be helpful for you at all, but it kind of is what it is. I'm not sure what happened, but over the past few years, I've kind of gotten sick a lot. I think I got it from my son, my young son. It's just like bringing in germs from playing with little kids. And I've had some that like really like bothered my throat or my voice, but when I recovered, my voice actually came back better in terms of like it got more texture or richness, or even got a little bit deeper. I don't know. It developed slightly. It was noticeable for me. So I don't know. I guess I just was fortunate there. All right, I'll do one, maybe two more. Golden Weave Animations. Of the original Conan books, which was your favorite? The original Conan stories, right? I want to say Tower of the Elephant. That's the first one that jumps to my mind. I really like it. It's one that has so much. It has the tavern scene at the beginning, which, as much as that's a generic and often poorly done way to start an adventure at a tavern, it wasn't generic back then, back in the whatever 30s or something when Howard wrote that. And it's not a generic tavern either. It's just that very seedy, gritty, dingy, shadowy swords and sorcery type tavern. And it has like great dialogue and like interplay. So there's a great social bit, and there's a bit of, every once in a while in the Conan stories, there's a little bit of philosophy that gets in there, and I quite like that. Even if I don't always agree with the philosophy, the way that there's a bit of battle of minds or battles of ideas in there, I find that very interesting. And then there's a sneaking, stealthing, heist sort of element to it. There, of course, are some great brutal action scenes. And then, like any great Conan story, it gets into bits of weirdness. It gets into bits of Lovecraftian things, a little bit of freaky, dark, almost horror. There's always that touch, or sometimes even more than a touch. There's sometimes a strong dose of eldritch and strange and terror in the Conan stories. So, and then there's the whole like story within a story when I forget the name of that elephant type race, alien race, that Conan comes across, all tied up and tortured in the tower, and he tells kind of the backstory of his people. So we get this like strange bit of lore from another world. There's a lot of layers to that one. It's a great one. After Tower of the Elephant. God and the Bull, Rogues in the House, Queen of the Black Coast, oh my gosh, what is it called? Underneath the Crimson Citadel. I might be saying that wrong. I like that one. Also some freaky moments in there too. I'm gonna go Tower of the Elephant. But it's a hard pick. There's a lot of them that I like. Okay. Last one. Oh, it looks like it's a super chat. Okay, so second to last one. I'll do the super chat here. Thank you very much for the support, by the way. Michael Pham. Hail Esper. Hail Michael. Longtime lurker and fan from SoCal. I'm a paramedic, so I have always gravitated towards cleric or healing oriented classes. Wishing your voice, campaign, and success on YouTube. Friend. Man, some of my very favorite characters I've ever played were either clerics or bards. And, you know, I guess the modern term people call those support classes or healing classes or healers. I never really cared for those terms, but you know, that's whatever. Um, I like them because they interact on a just on another level with the other players in the party. The way I've played those clerics have been, you know, really leaning into the wisdom, trying to give guidance and words of wisdom and counsel, and to encourage the other, you know, my companions, the other adventurers, to reflect upon things, to listen to instinct, to tap into their more mystical or spiritual side. I like that quite a bit. I find that very deeply fulfilling. Anything that kind of does a deep dive, and then the actual mechanics and the combat abilities are such, you get such a variety with both cleric and with bard. You can kind of do everything. And yeah, on the bardic side of things, the storytelling, the theatrics of it, the the poetry of it, the epic tales, and the lore keeper side, and music. I love music. Music is a huge part of my life. Along with the variety of different abilities, both in combat and out of combat. I find those types of classes very satisfying. But I'll play anything. I can find something to like in about any class. Okay, last one for real this time. Last one from Fujink. Hi Esper, have you ever played the Infinity Engine games like Baldur's Gate? What did you think of them? What is your favorite computer or console RPG game? I actually have never played any Baldur's Gate game. I would like to. I don't know where I will find the time to play them, but hopefully someday, somehow, I'll be able to. I'm extremely picky and opinionated with video games. There are some video games that I have loved. I grew up playing the NES, SNES, Sega Genesis generation of consoles. And then in my 20s, I played not a lot of different games, but I played a few games quite a bit on Xbox and Xbox 360. And other than that, I've just kind of sampled some games since then. So all-time favorite have to be The Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind, which I played on the original Xbox. I might try experiencing it on PC someday. That game meant more to me than any other game that I've ever played. Since I am an artist first and foremost, and I'm very much a person that's imagination based, that game was the perfect balance. What am I trying to say? It's the perfect moment where it's still kind of an old school game and the graphics still look kind of old school, that they still have that like stylized and artistic look of old school games. Modern games, not all, but a lot of modern games try to look hyper realistic. And the games that try to be more realistic, even, you know, Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion and even more so Skyrim, try to be very realistic, and that actually hurts the experience for me. I know it's not that way for everybody, and probably a lot of people wouldn't share that opinion, and that's, I know that I'm kind of weird, but I like my own imagination participating in the video game experience. I like that quite a bit. To me, that immerses me into the game. And when the game tries to be hyper realistic, it kind of dries up my imagination, and also it has this uncanny valley effect for me, because it seems like the more it tries to be realistic, the more it seems unrealistic. Whereas the old games, and again, it's not just old games. There are a number of, especially with like indie developers, that do make games that are artistic and have an aesthetic style to them and aren't trying to make a hyper realistic game. So I don't want to give the wrong impression there. So what I'm trying to say is the games that try to seem hyper realistic to me make me feel uninspired, and they seem even less realistic, less human. They seem odd. It just seems like a weird, janky robot pretending to be a human. Whereas the games that are more either artistic and stylized, or that just have simpler graphics, it's like my imagination does this dance with the game, and I kind of meet it somewhere halfway. So Morrowind was at that point where it doesn't look realistic enough yet. It still looks stylized and artistic, and it has a lot of personality and atmosphere. I really got into the atmosphere of that game and would imagine my character in that world, and I would imagine the interactions with the NPCs. The music, I think, was a big part of it too. It's largely an atmosphere thing, I think. I've gone back and played Morrowind a few times over the years. I still enjoy playing it. Gameplay wise, there are a few things in it that make it a little bit challenging to play it. But I think if you can slow down, and not everybody can do this, not everybody wants to do this, but sometimes I'm in that mood to actually slow down and do a slower paced game, and not try to just have this rushing through everything sort of experience. The Temple faction, I think it's called the Tribunal Temple faction. That's my favorite faction in Morrowind. That faction storyline is very interesting, and then the main storyline of Morrowind is probably the most unique and interesting video game storyline that I've ever seen. I can't think of anything that's quite like that. So yeah, the ability for my imagination to play a role in it, the atmosphere and the aesthetic of it, and the uniqueness of those storylines make me love that game. There might be one other aspect to it that I like a lot. Maybe the fact that you don't get like a marker that shows you exactly where you have to walk to. You yourself have to actually go out and explore a really big area. The game doesn't really help you very much. I like that as well. It kind of ruins the experience for me if a game is just like, here's this marker on the map, just walk to that marker. It just shows you literally right where to go. I don't know, I feel like I'm just a empty Coke bottle in a factory, just going down a conveyor belt, waiting for the machine to just fill the sugar water into me. All right, so I'll probably stop there. There's a lot of other games I could talk about. The old school Castlevania, the old school Zelda games, the old school Mario games, Dragon Warrior, which later was called Dragon Quest. I guess originally in Japan it was called Dragon Quest. I knew it as Dragon Warrior growing up. Shadowgate, Chrysalis, oh my gosh, Secret of Mana. There's a lot of games that really inspired me. I'll leave it there. All right, guys. Thanks for participating and for joining with me, or if you're catching this later, for catching up on it. Many things brewing, many irons in the fire, many projects in the wings, lots on the horizon. So stay tuned for all that, and look forward to all the developments to come. So wishing you all the best, and may your adventures be many. Until next time, my friends.